On a fateful spring day in 1972, the Ford Pinto went from this, a budget-friendly family car, to this, a literal bomb on wheels. What's more is that this incident wasn't isolated. It was the first of many explosive accidents that led Ford to recall over 1.5 million Pintos and over 100 lawsuits, costing Ford Motor Company millions of dollars and leaving its reputation in ashes.
It is not a civil or a product liability case. This time the Ford Motor Company is facing a criminal trial.
But to understand how such a small car could have ended the world's most famous auto manufacturer, we need to take a deeper look into this little rolling bomb. In the early 1970s, Ford introduced the Pinto as an affordable, practical car to compete with small, economical imports like the long-lasting Volkswagen Beetle.
How long will it last? Nobody knows.
And the Toyota Corolla.
The new Toyota Corolla, $1798.
With a price tag under $2,000, the Pinto became an attractive option for average American families and a competitive model within the car industry. The Pinto also boasted a less frequent oil change than its foreign counterparts.
Ford's Pinto lets you say goodbye to a lot of extra servicing, because Pinto needs half the oil changes of the leading import.
Set into motion by Ford's vice president Lee Iacocca, the Pinto only spent 25 months in the development phase, a time frame that was much shorter than the usual 43 months. At the time of its release, the car weighed under 2,000 pounds and boasted a price tag of under $2,000, making it one of the most affordable cars on the market. At first glance, the Pinto seemed destined for success. But behind the affordable price tag lay a critical flaw that would soon turn it into the biggest disaster in Ford's history. The 1970s was a turbulent decade for America. The oil crisis and rising inflation reshaped consumer behavior, forcing buyers to prioritize practicality over desire. Cars were no longer seen as a ticket to freedom, but as a simple way to get from point A to point B. Automotive companies had to fight tough regulations at home and an extremely high level of competition from abroad. It was at this point foreign giants like Toyota and Volkswagen seized the opportunity, luring American buyers away from domestic manufacturers with vehicles that prioritize safety and fuel efficiency, whereas US automakers were falling behind. Anybody remember this guy, by the way? Yeah. Even Red Foreman from That 70s Show, known for his hate for Japanese products, ended up buying a Toyota for its fuel efficiency. Even though it's just a TV show, it makes a clear statement. Ford knew they needed to find a solution before they ended up losing the attention of their target market. They needed something to put them back on top. And so, with only a handful of time, Ford's enthusiasm, and the hard struggle of workers, Ford managed to roll out their new car. The Pinto. The Pinto exceeded expectations at the time of its release. Ford saw their baby rolling off the showroom floor almost faster than it took them to develop the vehicle in the first place. Car enthusiasts across the country praised the vehicle at first, and even some reviews stated that it came with the same feel as a high-end sports car. But again, if the Pinto was that great, then it wouldn't have caught on fire on multiple, and I mean multiple, occasions, absolutely out of nowhere. On May 28, 1972, a Ford Pinto carrying 13-year-old Richard Grimshaw and driver Lily Gray were traveling out of Anaheim. The two were on their way to meet Mrs. Gray's husband in Barstow, completely unaware of the danger they were in when they were struck from behind by a Ford Galaxy. Today, a minor fender bender like this is often seen as an inconvenience. You file a claim, get your car fixed, and move on. But back in the 70s, if you were driving a Pinto, it could quickly become the final ride of your life. The crash caused the Pinto to catch fire, tragically taking Gray's life and leaving Grimshaw with severe, disfiguring burns. At the time, this didn't make sense. Ford had been around for decades and was known for making high-performance cars. People couldn't understand how the company behind America's first car could turn a minor accident into something so deadly. Was it just a freak accident? A rare event where Grimshaw and Gray were just unlucky? Or was there something seriously wrong, hidden behind the corporate secrets that could have led to more deaths down the road? Going back to the insanely short time frame in which the Pinto was built, it's important to note that Lee Iacocca was notorious for his "read the production objectives and get back to work" type of attitude. The pressure to meet deadlines was immense. It seemed like no one in the leadership had the foresight to ask, is this really achievable? Should we slow down to ensure no compromises? In the end, the rush to make the Pinto a reality came with the catastrophic consequences that no one could have predicted. With that in mind, you have to wonder if Ford's rush to create the Pinto is what ultimately cost Lily Gray her life and severely injured Richard Grimshaw that day. Though Grimshaw was able to escape, the severity of his injuries was unimaginable. It took over 90 surgeries to repair the damage to his skin, not to mention the mental scars one can endure after they escape death. In the aftermath, Grimshaw and Gray's surviving family members decided to sue Ford for damages. Like any large corporation, Ford fought back, pulling out all the legal stops to avoid taking responsibility. But their defense soon began to crumble when the court discovered a major flaw in the Pinto that had been hidden beneath its affordable, appealing exterior. The discovery shocked the American public. Was this flaw an unfortunate mistake, only revealed after a worst-case scenario, or had it been intentionally overlooked to save Ford money during production? What the public knew at the time was that the jury awarded Grimshaw $125 million in punitive damages, the largest product liability verdict in U.S. history at the time. In today's world, this would amount to $1 billion. This ruling hit Ford not only in its finances, but also its reputation. Consumers began questioning whether they could trust Ford, a brand that had been long synonymous with American innovation and reliability. As bad press piled up, the public's anger grew. Production lines for the Pinto were halted, and Ford found itself losing millions in sales. The company had to issue refunds and cover the costs of repairs for thousands of vehicles. Eventually, the punitive damages were reduced to $3.5 million in an appeals court, but the damage to Ford's reputation was irreversible. Unfortunately, this case only scratched the surface of what was to come for Ford and the Pinto. As we keep digging through the story of this extremely deadly car, you'll begin to understand the real reason for Ford's failure to take action and prevent the tragic loss of so many lives. On August 10, 1978, sisters Judy and Lynn Ulrich, along with their cousin Donna, were on their way to a church volleyball game. Judy, 18 at the time, was driving the family's 1972 Ford Pinto, heading out to meet their friends, excited for the game, when a fiery series of events changed everything forever. Earlier in the drive, Judy had stopped at a gas station to fill up, and as she continued down US 33, she grew anxious, worried that she had forgotten to put the gas cap back on after fueling. Concerned that the cap might have fallen off and that gasoline might be spilling, Judy decided to slow down and check. At that moment, she had no idea that a Chevy van, driven by 28-year-old Robert Duggar, was rapidly approaching from behind. Duggar had been distracted, looking around for a pack of cigarettes in his van. By the time he noticed that Judy's Pinto was slowing down, it was far too late to avoid a collision. The van slammed into the rear of the Pinto at a speed of 30 to 40 miles per hour. Initially, the crash seemed relatively minor, nothing out of the ordinary for a low-speed rear-end collision. Both vehicles came to a halt, and the impact didn't seem severe enough to cause major damage. But that would soon change, and within seconds, flames began to erupt from the rear of the Pinto. The fire spread quickly, engulfing the rear of the car in flames. Judy, who had been trying to check the gas cap, was now trapped in a nightmare as the flames crept forward, threatening her and her two passengers. The fire escalated quickly, but Judy managed to get out of the car. She was severely burned in the process, while Lynn and Donna were pronounced deceased just within seconds of the fire igniting. Tragically, despite heroic attempts to save Judy, she would die of severe burns all over her body just 8 hours later at the hospital. Her death, coupled with the immediate loss of her passengers, sent shockwaves through the small community and left a hole in the hearts of their grieving family. By the time the state troopers arrived on the scene, it was too late. The Pinto was completely consumed by flames, leaving only a burnt shell behind. The crash and subsequent fire were horrifyingly fast. What appeared to be a minor fender bender quickly escalated into a catastrophic tragedy, thanks to a deadly design of the Pinto. This was a brutal reminder of how something as seemingly innocent as a small car crash could result in such loss.
It is not a civil or a product liability case. This time, the Ford Motor Company is facing a criminal trial.
In the aftermath of the accident, Judy's surviving family members, along with the family of Donna and Lynn, filed a lawsuit against Ford, seeking justice for the devastating deaths of their loved ones. This case would soon become a landmark legal battle, not just for the victims' families, but for the larger issue of corporate responsibility in automotive safety. As the result of a newly passed state law allowing companies to be held criminally liable for negligent actions leading to death, Ford was charged with 3 counts of reckless homicide. So what do you think? Was Ford at fault for the many deaths the Pinto caused? Or were these charges unrealistic with the intent to punish the company for producing a car that wasn't as great as it may have seemed? Earlier, we saw how Ford was eager to cut corners in order to meet their extreme deadlines. Once we let you in on Ford's dirty little secret, you'll finally be able to see for yourself how truly negligent Ford was at the time. To make the Pinto more fuel efficient and affordable, Iacocca's team was forced to make some compromises. They placed the fuel tank between the rear axle and the bumper, a design that seemed less risky than it really was. In most cars, the fuel tank is positioned more centrally for safety, especially in the event of a rear-end collision. The Pinto's fuel tank placement, however, meant that if the car was hit from behind, the fuel tank could be pierced, causing gasoline to leak into the passenger compartment. This occurred when the floor pan detached from the rear fenders, allowing fuel and flames to spread into the cabin. Structural deformity in the car also made it hard for passengers to escape because the impact would cause the doors to jam shut. This created not only just a fire hazard, but a deadly one that Ford refused to fix. A decision based on a shocking calculation revealed in a secret internal memo. It's tragic, but Ford's negligence led to the deaths of anywhere from 500 to 900 people in Pinto-related accidents. I don't know about you, but I often wonder how Ford got away with this for as long as they did. I spent many nights searching to finally pin down an exact answer until I found the name of one man, Robert McNamara, who was an executive at Ford, introduced the use of a cost-benefit analysis during his time at the company. While effective for boosting profits, the approach would end up proving disastrous for the company's reputation because it determined how they handled defects within the car. While McNamara never anticipated that his analysis would be used in such a horrific way, it soon became central to the Pinto cases. This, along with several significant pieces of evidence we'll soon uncover, reveals that Ford was likely fully aware of the Pinto's dangerous defects, but deliberately chose to ignore them, making decisions that were utterly unthinkable. Early crash tests showed that the car was especially prone to fires due to fuel leaks and low-speed rear-end collisions. Internal documents that surfaced later revealed that Ford's executives were well aware of the problem only months after the Pinto's release. Despite this knowledge, they chose not to act. Engineers at Ford had suggested several potential fixes, such as adding a shield behind the rear axle to protect the fuel tank, or using a rubberized bladder to prevent gasoline from spilling in a crash. However, these solutions were dismissed by the company's leadership. Instead of addressing the safety issue, Ford's executives were determined to keep costs down. no matter the consequences. This decision became a key point in court and public discussions, revealing that Ford had made a conscious choice to ignore safety improvements in favor of profit. The final nail in the Pinto's coffin came in 1977, when a magazine called Mother Jones published an article titled Pinto Madness. The purpose of the article was to raise public awareness about the Pinto's deadly defects, and in this respect, the article proved successful. In the article, a Ford engineer turned whistleblower revealed that whenever a safety concern threatened to delay production, Ford executive Lee Iacocca would respond by chomping on his cigar and saying, "Read the product objectives and get back to work." This statement made it clear to the public that Ford had no intention of addressing the Pinto's design flaws, despite knowing the risks. This disregard for safety was further evidenced by the internal memo from Ford to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, which detailed a shocking calculation. The memo, based on McNamara's cost-benefit analysis, compared the price of installing safety measures to the benefit of saving lives, with the conclusion that the cost of making the Pinto safer outweighed the benefit of preventing deaths. To Ford's executives, the price of human lives was deemed less important than the company's bottom line, and they decided not to make changes to the vehicle. It would have cost Ford just $11 per car to make the Pinto safer and prevent future fatalities. Think about what $11 could get you today. Maybe you could buy a cheap t-shirt or a decent meal at a fast food joint. In today's terms, $11 doesn't stretch far. But back in the 1970s, $11 equaled about $85. Wouldn't you have gladly paid $85 more for a $22,000 car to ensure your safety? I know I would. In the end, Ford was unwilling to spend the necessary funds to make the Pinto safe and reliable for its customers. Fixing the cars would have cost them $143 million, but they determined that the benefit, $49 million in potential savings from avoiding lawsuits and recalls, was simply not worth it. Essentially, Ford told the public that the lives of their customers were not worth the expense of improving safety. To put this into perspective, $49 million in 1970 would be worth $398 million today. Ford stood to make a net gain of nearly $200 million if they had made the safety improvements, even if it meant spending more up front. Imagine if Ford had made these changes before the Pinto's release. Each customer would only have to pay $11 more, but the company would still have made the same profit, and their reputation would have remained intact. Despite the argument that Ford's decision wasn't solely about the Pinto, and that the memo also considered other vehicles, it doesn't excuse the company's behavior. Ford could have chosen the path of safety and integrity, but instead, they chose to put profits over people's lives. However, it's deeply unsettling to know that Ford had the chance to fix the Pinto to save lives and still proceeded not to. Did Ford truly learn their lesson from the Pinto disaster? At the time, it was painfully clear that they didn't prioritize safety. The company's blatant disregard for the lives of those killed by the Pinto, coupled with their refusal to fix known defects, painted a grim picture. Over its 10-year run, the Pinto was linked to anywhere from 500 to 900 deaths, and still, Ford pushed ahead, more interested in profits than preventing tragedy. The facts remain stark, and they tell the painful truth. Ford chose to save a few dollars per car rather than address the safety flaws that caused these needless deaths. Whether it was the tragic incidents involving Mrs. Gray and Richard Grimshaw, the 3 girls from Indiana, or countless others, the result was always the same. Lives were lost, and Ford refused to make changes. This scandal not only cost lives, but also severely damaged Ford's reputation. After their peak year in 1974, Pinto sales plummeted from 544,209 units to just 224,000 in 1976, showing the real power of the American public. In June 1978, the company announced the recall of 1.5 million Ford Pintos, along with 30,000 Mercury Bobcat sedans and hatchback models for fuel tank design defects. Lee Iacocca, once a key figure in pushing for the Pinto's rush production, was eventually dismissed from Ford in 1978. Later on, in July of 1980, Ford finally decided to roll back production of the vehicle and only released 68,179 Pintos that year, but by then, the damage had already been done. While this marked the end of the Pinto era, it also signaled Ford's eventual shift towards prioritizing safety over cost. Throughout the 1980s, the company slowly began to rebuild its reputation. Yet, despite this recovery, the disasters of the 1970s would remain a permanent stain on Ford's legacy, one that will never be forgotten, no matter how much time passes. So, what do you think? Should Ford have been held accountable for their actions, or did they deserve redemption? Let us know in the comments below. Anyways, we've been working hard to bring you the absolute best content in the world of cars and automotive history. Please be sure to let us know what other car-related topics you'd like us to cover. If you like our content and want to see more from us, please make sure you like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Until next time, drive safe. We'll see you soon.